Lalita. And those of you that have been following along know that we are in the final battle scene of the Ramāyana, and Ravana's been being shot many, many times, and his heads fall off and his body pieces fall off, but they come back to life. So here we are. As Ravana let loose his powers of illusion, terrible beings appeared on the scene, goblins, ghosts, and ghouls, with bows and arrows in their hands, yoginis holding a sword in one hand and a human skull in another, from which they quaffed draughts of fresh blood, danced and sang many songs. They uttered horrible cries of seize and kill, which echoed all around. With their mouths wide open, they rushed to devour the monkeys, who then took to their heels. But wherever the monkeys turned in their flight, they saw a blazing fire. The monkeys and bears were thus in a quandary. Then Ravana began raining on them a shower of sand. Having terrified and confused monkeys on all sides, the 10-headed monster roared again. All the heroes, including Lakshman and Sugriv, the king of the monkeys, fainted. The bravest of them wrung their hands, crying, "Ah, Ram! Alas, Raghunath, Lord of the Raghus!" Having thus crushed the might of all, he wrought another delusion. He manifested a host of Hanumans, who rushed forward with rocks in their hands and encircled Sri Ram in a dense configuration on every side. With uplifted tails and gnashing teeth, they shouted, "Seize and kill him, let him not escape." Surrounded by their tails on every side, the Lord of Kosala shone in their midst. In their midst, the king of Kosala, with his dark-hued body, shone forth as resplendent as a lofty tamala tree, encircled by a magnificent hedge of multitudinous rainbows. The gods experienced in their heart a mixed feeling of joy and sorrow, and raised the cries of victory, victory, victory. The hero of Raghu's line now flew into a rage, and with a single arrow instantly dispersed the delusion. The delusion having vanished, the monkeys and bears rejoiced, and all turned back with trees and rocks in their hands. Sri Ram shot forth a volley of arrows, which once more cut off Ravana's arms and heads. If hundreds of Sheshas, serpent gods, Shardas, goddesses of speech, the Vedas, and bards were to recite the story of the battle between Sri Ram and Ravana, and that too for many cycles together, even they would never be able to do it justice. The dull-witted Tulsidas has described only a few salient features of that combat, just as a fly wings the sky according to its own capacity. The valiant lord of Lanka could not be killed, even though his heads and arms were cut asunder many times over. It was simply a pastime for the Lord Ram. But the gods, the siddhas, and the sages fidgeted to see the Lord struggling with Ravana. No sooner were Ravana's heads cut off than a fresh crop grew, like covetousness, which increases with every new gain. The enemy could not be killed in spite of the prolonged struggle. Sri Ram then looked at Vibhishana. "Uma," continues Lord Shiva, "the Lord whose will causes the death of death himself, thereby tested the devotion of his servant." Says Vibhishana, Listen, all-wise ruler of the animate and the inanimate creation, protector of the suppliant, delight of the gods and sages. Nectar abides in his navel. By virtue of it, my lord, Ravana survives. The all-merciful rejoiced to hear the words of Vibhisha and took up terrible shafts in his hands. Many ill omens manifested themselves at that time. Donkeys, jackals, and dogs howled in large numbers. Birds, too, screamed and thereby portended a world calamity. And comets appeared in every quarter of the heavens. There was a preternatural and unusual glow on the horizon on all sides, and a solar eclipse occurred even without the day of the new moon. Mandodari's heart beat wildly, and idols shed tears from their eyes. Idols wept. Lightning flashed with the thunderclap in the air. Furious winds blew. The earth quaked, and the clouds dropped blood, hair, and dust. Who could recount the great ill omens? The gods in heaven were dismayed at the sight of the boundless, portentous phenomenon and shouted, "Victory! Victory!" And perceiving the distress of the gods, the gracious lord of the Raghus set an arrow to his bow. Drawing the bowstring right up to his ear, the lord of the Raghus let fly 31 shafts, which flew forth like serpents of death. One arrow dried up the reservoir of nectar in Ravana's navel, while the rest struck his 10 heads and 20 arms. The arrows carried off with them all his heads and arms, while the headless and armless trunk danced on the battlefield. The earth sank under the weight of the trunk as it rushed violently on, till the Lord struck it with his arrow and split it in two. While dying, Ravana shouted with a loud and terrible roar, "Where's Ram, that I may challenge and slay him in battle?" The earth reeled as the 10-headed monster fell. The ocean, the rivers, the elephants guarding the quarters, and the mountains were shaken. The 2 halves dropped to the ground, crushing under their weight a host of bears and monkeys. After depositing the arms and heads before Mandodari, the darts returned to the Lord of the universe and found their way back into his quiver. Seeing this, the gods sounded their kettle drums. Ravana's soul entered the Lord's mouth in the form of effulgence. Lord Shambhu and the four-faced Brahma, the creator, rejoiced to see the spectacle. The whole universe resounded with cries of "Victory! Victory! Glory to the hero of Raghu's line, mighty of arm!" Gods and sages rained down flowers, shouting, "Glory, glory to the all-merciful! Glory to Mukunda, the bestower of liberation!" Glory to you, O Mukunda, the fountain of mercy, the dispeller of all fears of pairs of opposites, the delight of those who take refuge in you, the torment of the ranks of the wicked, the prime cause, the ever-compassionate and omnipresent ruler of all. Full of joy, the gods rained down flowers. Their kettle drums sounded with a crash. On the battlefield, Sri Ram's limbs displayed the beauty of the beautiful God of love. The crown of matted hair on his head, interspersed with most beautiful flowers, gleamed like flashes of lightning on the starlit peak of a dark mountain. As he stood turning his bow and arrow between his arms, specks of blood adorned his person, like a swarm of Raimuni birds perched on a tamala tree, absorbed in their delight. With a shower of gracious glances, the Lord dispelled the fears of the gods, and the bears and monkeys all shouted in their joy, "Glory to Mukunda, the abode of bliss." The moment Mandodari saw her lord's heads, she fainted in her grief and dropped to the ground. Ravana's other wives too sprang up and rushed to the spot, weeping. Lifting up and supporting Mandodari, they all arrived where Ravana's remains lay. Seeing their lord's condition, they set up a shriek. Their hair flew loose, and they became oblivious of their bodies. Wildly beating their bosoms and weeping, they recounted his glory. Mandodari said, "At your might, my lord, the earth ever shook. Fire, the moon, and the sun stood obscure before your splendor. Even Shesha and the divine tortoise could not bear the weight of your body, which is now lying on the ground soiled with dust. Varuna, Kubera, Indra, and the wind god, none of these ever had the courage to confront you in battle. By the might of your arm, my lord, you conquered the god of death. Yet you lie today like a forlorn creature. Your greatness is known all the world over. Even your kings and the kingsmen possessed untold strength. Hostility with Ram has, however, reduced you to such a plight. Not one of your stock is left to lament over your death. The whole of God's creation, my lord, was under your control. The frightened regents of the 8 quarters ever bowed their heads to you. But now, jackals feast on your heads and arms, a fate in no way undeserved by an enemy of Sri Ram. Doomed to death, my lord, you heeded not my words and took the ruler of all animate and inanimate beings for an ordinary mortal. You took for a mere man Sri Hari himself, a veritable fire to consume the forest of the demon race, and did not adore the All-Merciful, to whom my beloved spouse, Lord Shiva, Brahma, the creator, and other gods pay homage. This body of yours took delight from its very birth in harming others, and was a sink of multitudinous sins. Yet, Sri Ram has absorbed you in his own being. I bow to him, the immutable Brahm. Ah, my lord, there is none else so gracious as the divine Sri Ram, the Lord of the Raghus, who bestowed on you a state which is difficult even for the yogis to attain. The gods, sages, and siddhas all rejoiced to hear Mandodari's words. Brahma, the great Lord Shiva, Narada, Sanaka, and his 3 brothers, Sunandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar, and all other great sages who taught the highest truth, the identity of the individual soul with the Supreme Spirit, were all overwhelmed with emotion as they feasted their eyes on the Lord of the Raghus and felt supremely gratified. Seeing all the women lamenting, Vibhishan approached them with a very heavy heart and was grieved to see his brother's condition. The Lord then gave an order to his younger brother Lakshman, who consoled him in many ways. Then Vibhishan returned to his lord, who looked upon him with an eye of compassion and said, abandon all sorrow and perform the funeral rites. In obedience to the Lord's command, he performed the obsequies, strictly observing the scriptural ordinance and with due regard to time and place. After offering to the deceased handfuls of water and sesame seeds, Mandodari and all the other queens returned to their palace, recounting to themselves the host of excellences of Sri Ram, the Lord of the Raghus. After finishing the obsequies, Vibhishan came and bowed his head once more. The All-Merciful then called his younger brother. Do you and Sugriva, the Lord of the Monkeys, as well as Angad, Nala, and Nila, with Jambavan and Hanuman, sagacious as you are, all of you, accompany Vibhishan and make arrangements for his coronation, said the Lord of the Raghus. In deference to my father's command, I may not enter a town, but send the monkeys and my younger brother, who are as good as myself. On hearing the Lord's command, the monkeys proceeded at once, and arriving in town, made preparations for the installation. With due reverence, they seated him on the throne, and applying a sacred mark on his forehead as a token of sovereignty, they glorified him. Joining their palms, they all bowed their heads to him. And then, with Vibhishan, they returned to the Lord. The hero of Raghu's line next called the monkeys together and gratified them all by addressing kind words to them. The Lord cheered them by speaking to them words sweet as nectar. It is by your might that the enemy has been killed, and Vibhishan now holds the kingdom of Lanka. Your glory will remain ever fresh in all the three spheres. Men who sing your blessed glory along with mine shall easily cross the boundless ocean of mundane existence. The monkey host would never feel sated with listening to the Lord's words. They all bowed their heads and clasped his lotus feet again and again. The Lord then called Hanuman. Go to Lanka, said the Almighty, and tell Janak's daughter all that has happened, and then return with news of her welfare. Thereupon Hanuman entered the city, and on hearing of his arrival, demons and demonesses ran to meet him. They paid him all kinds of homage, and then conducted him into the presence of Janak's daughter. Hanuman made obeisance to her from a respectable distance, and Janak's daughter recognized him as Sri Ram's own messenger. Tell me, my dear son, if my gracious Lord is doing well with his younger brother and the monkey host. All is well with the Lord of Kosala. Mother, the 10-headed monster has been conquered in battle, while Vibhishan has attained everlasting dominion that will endure till the end of this kalpa. Her heart was filled with joy when she heard the monkey's words. Her soul was overjoyed. A thrill ran through her body, and with eyes full of tears, Rama, Sita, said again and again, "What can I give you? There is nothing in all the three worlds equal in value to this information. Listen, Mother. Today I have doubtless attained the sovereignty of the entire creation when I find Sri Ram safe and sound with his brother after conquering the enemy's ranks on the battlefield. Listen, Hanuman, my son. May all commendable virtues abide in your heart, and may the Lord of Kosala, with Ananta, Lakshman, be ever gracious to you. Now, my dear son, devise some means whereby I may behold with my own eyes the tender, swarthy limbs of my Lord. Then Hanuman returned to Sri Ram and apprised him of Sita's welfare. On hearing the tidings, the ornament of the solar race called Prince Angad and Vibhishan. Both of you, accompany the son of the wind god and respectfully escort Janak's daughter here. Forthwith, all went to the place where Sita was and found a whole host of demonesses waiting on her in all humility. Vibhishan gave prompt instructions to the demonesses, who washed her body in all possible ways. They also decked her with ornaments of every description, and then brought a beautiful palanquin duly equipped. Videhi's daughter gladly mounted it, with her thoughts fixed on the all-blissful Ram, her loving Lord. Guards marched on all four sides, staves in hand. They were all supremely delighted at heart. The monkeys and bears all came to have a look at her, but the guards darted in a fury to keep them back. Said the hero of Raghu's line, "Follow my advice, Vibhishan, and bring Sita on foot. Let the monkeys gaze on her as they would on their own mother," added the almighty Lord of the Raghus, smiling. The bears and monkeys rejoiced to hear the Lord's words, while from the heavens the gods rained down flowers in profusion. Sita, it will be remembered, had been previously lodged in fire. Sri Ram, the inner witness of all, now sought to bring her back to light. It was for this reason that the All-Merciful addressed some reproachful words to her. On hearing them, the demon ladies who accompanied her began to lament. Sita, however, bowed to the Lord's command, pure as she was in thought, word, and deed, and said, "Lakshman, help me as a priest in the performance of this sacred rite, and quickly kindle a fire for me." When Lakshman heard Sita's words, full of anguish caused by separation from her Lord, and imbued with critical insight, piety, and prudence, tears rushed to his eyes, and he joined his palms in prayer. But he too could not speak a word to the Lord. Reading Sri Ram's tacit approval in his looks, however, Lakshman ran, and after kindling a fire, brought plenty of firewood. Videha's daughter rejoiced at heart to perceive the blazing fire, and did not flinch at all. If, in thought, word, and deed, I have never set my heart on anyone other than the hero of Raghu's line, may this fire, which knows the working of all minds, become cool like sandal paste to me. With her thoughts fixed on the Lord, the princess of Mithila entered the flames as though they were cool like sandal paste, crying, "Glory to the Lord of Kosala, whose feet are adored by the great Lord Shiva with the purest devotion." Both her shadow form, as well as the social stigma occasioned by her forced residence at Ravana's, were consumed in the blazing fire. But no one could know the secret of the Lord's doings. Even the gods, siddhas and sages, stood gazing in the air. Fire assumed a bodily form, and taking by the hand the real Shri, Sita, celebrated alike in the Vedas and the world. They escorted and presented her to Sri Ram, even as the ocean of milk presented goddess Indira, Lakshmi, to Lord Vishnu. Standing on the left side of Sri Ram, she shone resplendent in her exquisite beauty, like the bud of a gold lily beside a fresh blue lotus. The gods in their delight rained down flowers, and kettle drums sounded in the air. The kinnaras sang their melodies, and the celestial nymphs danced, all mounted on their aerial cars. The beauty of the Lord reunited with Janak's daughter was beyond all measure and bound. The bears and monkeys rejoiced at the sight and shouted, "Glory to the Lord of the Raghus, the essence of bliss." Then, with the permission of Sri Ram, Matali, Indra's charioteer, left for his abode in heaven after bowing his head at the Lord's feet. Now came the gods, ever alive to their own selfish interests, and spoke words as though they were seekers of the highest truth. Friend of the meek, gracious, and divine Lord of the Raghus, you have shown mercy to the gods. This sensual wretch, who took delight in doing mischief to the whole world and trod the evil way, has perished through his own sins. You are alike to all, the imperishable Brahma, ever changeable, impartial, to the imperishable Brahm, ever unchangeable, impartial by nature, integral, devoid of material properties, unborn, sinless, immutable, invincible, unfailing in power, and full of compassion. It was you who assumed the form of a fish, a tortoise, a boar, a man-lion, and a dwarf, as well as that of Parasurama. Whenever, O Lord, the gods have been in trouble, you've put an end to it by appearing in one form or another. This impure wretch, a perpetual enemy of the gods, was given up to lust, greed, vanity, and passion. That even this vilest creature attained your state is a marvel to us. We gods are supremely qualified for the highest state, yet devoted as we are to our own selfish ends, we have forgotten the worship of our Lord and are ever involved in the flood of birth and death. Now, redeem us, O Lord, since we have sought shelter in you. Having thus made their supplication, the gods and Sittas all remained standing where they were with joined palms. Then, thrilling all over with an excess of love, Brahma commenced his prayer. Glory to you, O Ram, perpetual abode of bliss. O Hari, reliever of suffering. O chief of the Raghus, bearing a bow and arrows. Lord, you are a veritable lion to tear in pieces the elephant of mundane existence, and an ocean of virtues, my clever and omnipresent master. In your person stands concentrated the incomparable beauty of the God of love. Sittas, as well as the great sages and bards, sing your praises. Your glory is not only sacred, it purifies all. In your wrath you seized Ravana, even as Garuda, the king of the birds, might seize a huge serpent. Delight of devotees, and dispeller of their grief and fear. You are ever unmoved by passion and are all intelligent, my Lord. Your descent on the mortal plane is beneficent and full of untold virtues. You come to relieve earth's burdens, and your manifestations on earth are wisdom personified. Though descended on earth, you're ever unborn, omnipresent, one without a second, and beginningless. I gladly bow to you, O Ram, fountain of mercy. Ornament of Raghu's race, and slayer of demon Dushan, Ravana's cousin. You eradicate the faults of your devotees, and made Vibhishan, destitute as he was, the ruler of Lanka. Storehouse of virtue and wisdom, and beyond all measure, you have no pride in yourself, and are unborn, all-pervading, and free from the taint of Maya. I constantly adore you, Ram. Terrible is the glory and might of your arms, which are deft in exterminating the hordes of the impious. Compassionate and friendly to the poor, without any ostensible reason, and a reservoir of beauty. I adore you, along with Rama. Deliverer from the rounds of birth and death, you are beyond both cause, prakriti, and effect, the phenomenal universe, and eradicate the awful weaknesses of the devotee's mind. Armed with a charming bow, arrows, and quiver, you have eyes resembling a red lotus. A paragon of kings, home of bliss, Lakshmi's lovely consort, subduer of arrogance, lust, and the false sense of mindness. You are free from blemish, integral and imperceptible to the senses. Though manifest in all forms, you never transmuted yourself into them all. So declare the Vedas. It is no mere gossip, as will be clear from the analogy of the sun and the sunshine, which are different and yet identical. Blessed are all these monkeys, O ubiquitous Lord, who reverently gaze on your countenance, while accursed, O Hari, is our so-called immortal existence and our ethereal bodies, in that we lack devotion to you and are lost in worldly pleasures. Now show your mercy to me, compassionate as you are to the afflicted, and take away my differentiating sense, which leads me to wrong action, and deluded by which I pass my days in merriment, mistaking woe for happiness. Destroyer of the wicked and lovely jewel of the earth, your lotus feet are adored even by Shambhu and Uma. O King of Kings, grant me this boon, that I may cherish loving devotion to your lotus feet, a perennial source of blessings. As the four-faced Brahma thus prayed, his body was entirely thrilled with emotion, and his eyes knew no satiation as they gazed on the ocean of beauty. That very moment, King Dasarath appeared on the scene in his celestial form. His eyes were flooded with tears as he beheld his son, Sri Ram. The Lord and his younger brother, Lakshman, made obeisance, and the father in his turn gave them his blessing. Dear Father, it was all due to your religious merit that I conquered the invincible demon king. Dasharat was overwhelmed with emotion when he heard his son's words. Tears rushed to his eyes again, and the hair on his body stood on end. The Lord of the Raghus understood that his father bore the same affection for him as he did before. He therefore looked at his father and bestowed on him great wisdom. Uma, continues Lord Shiva, Dasharat did not attain that liberation for the simple reason that he set his heart on devotion while maintaining his separate identity. Worshippers of God in his embodied form spurn final beatitude. To them, Sri Ram vouchsafes devotion to his own person. Having prostrated himself before the Lord again and again, Dasharat joyfully returned to his abode in heaven. Perceiving the Almighty Lord of Kosala safe and sound with his younger brother Lakshman and Janak's daughter, and beholding their beauty, Indra, the Lord of the celestials, began extolling him with a cheerful heart. Glory to Sri Ram, beauty personified, the bestower of peace on the suppliant, equipped with an excellent bow, arrows, and quiver, and triumphing in his mighty strength of arm. Glory to the slayer of Dushan and Kar, and the crusher of the demon hordes. Now that you have disposed of this wretch, my lord, all the gods enjoy full security. Glory to the reliever of earth's burden, whose greatness is beneficent and unbounded. Glory to all merciful slayer of Ravana, who reduced the demon host to a miserable plight. Outrageous was the pride of Ravana, the lord of Lanka, who subdued even gods and Gandharvas. Nay, he relentlessly pursued sages, the Siddhas, human beings, birds, and Nagas alike. He took delight in injuring others and was most wicked. The vile sinner has now reaped the fruit of his misdeeds. Now listen, my lord, possessed of eyes as large as the lotus and compassionate to the humble. My pride was inordinate. I accounted no one as equal to me. At the sight of your lotus feet, however, my pride, which caused me much woe, has taken leave of me. Some people meditate on the attributeless Brahm, the Absolute, whom the Vedas declare as unmanifest. What attracts my mind, however, is the Supreme, embodied as Sri Ram, King of Kosala. Together with Videha's daughter and your younger brother Lakshman, therefore, pray abide in my heart, and recognizing me as your own servant, bless me with devotion, O abode of Rama. Grant me devotion to your feet, O abode of Rama, dispeller of fear and solace of the supplicant. I adore you, O blissful Ram, the Lord of the Raghus. Abode of beauty, delight of the hosts of heaven, queller of contrary experiences like joy and sorrow, appearing in a human form, possessing incomparable strength, worthy of adoration even to Brahma and Shankar. O Rama, I bow to you, tender as you are through compassion. Now cast your gracious look on me, O merciful Lord, and command me what to do. Hearing these polite words, Sri Ram, who is noted for his compassion to the meek, enjoined him as follows. Listen, King of the gods, our monkeys and bears, those that were killed by the demons, are lying on the ground. They have laid down their lives in my service. Therefore, Restore all of them to life, O wise Lord of the celestials. Listen, O King of the birds, continues Kakabusundi. These words of the Lord are profoundly mysterious. Only enlightened sages can apprehend them. The Lord himself can wipe out the inhabitants of the three spheres and bring them back to life. He only wished to give Indra honor. By a shower of nectar, Indra restored the monkeys and bears to life. They all arose with delight and betook themselves to the Lord. Although the shower of nectar fell on both the dead of both the armies, it is the bears and monkeys and bears, they were all part manifestations of the gods, who are all immortal. Hence, they all came back to life by the will of Sri Ram, the Lord of the Raghus. Is there anyone so kind to the afflicted as Sri Ram, who liberated the whole demon host? Even the wicked Ravana, who was a sink of impurities and given up to sensuality, attained an exalted state, withheld even from the greatest of sages. After raining down flowers, the gods each mounted his own shining aerial car and departed. Finding it a welcome opportunity, the all-wise Shambhu, Lord Shiva, arrived in the presence of the Lord.